What if I told you that the gray hair you see in the mirror is not simply a cosmetic change, not merely a birthday marker, but a biological signal rising from deep within your cells? What if those silver strands are not random at all, but the visible evidence of microscopic stress, nutrient shifts, and protective systems slowing down over time? Because gray hair doesn't just happen. It happens when melanocytes, the specialized cells inside each hair follicle responsible for producing melanin, gradually lose efficiency. And those melanocytes are highly sensitive to oxidative stress, inflammation, and nutrient availability. When they are protected, supported, and nourished, they function longer. When they are overwhelmed, pigment production fades. Inside every strand of naturally colored hair is melanin, the pigment that determines whether your hair is black, brown, blonde, or red. Producing melanin is not a passive act. It requires enzymes, minerals, oxygen, and cellular energy. One of the key enzymes involved is tyrosinase, and it depends on copper to function properly. Without sufficient copper, melanin synthesis slows. Without adequate iron, oxygen delivery to the follicle decreases. Without antioxidants, oxidative stress builds up like rust inside a machine, damaging the pigment-producing cells. This is where black sesame seeds enter the picture. Tiny seeds, often overlooked, yet densely packed with copper, iron, and antioxidant compounds such as sesamin and sesamol. These compounds help neutralize free radicals before they damage melanocytes. Free radicals are unstable molecules generated through normal metabolism, environmental toxins, and even psychological stress. When free radicals accumulate, they injure cellular DNA, proteins, and membranes. Melanocytes are particularly vulnerable. Black sesame acts like internal reinforcement, helping maintain the mineral foundation and antioxidant shield that pigment cells require. Now consider dark leafy greens like spinach and kale. These greens are biological support systems in edible form. They provide folate, a B vitamin essential for DNA synthesis and repair. Hair follicle cells divide rapidly. Rapid division demands precise DNA replication. Folate ensures that this replication happens accurately. When folate levels drop, cellular renewal becomes less efficient and pigment production can suffer. Leafy greens also deliver iron, which supports hemoglobin in transporting oxygen throughout the body. Hair follicles are metabolically active structures. They need a steady oxygen supply to sustain melanin production. Without oxygen, energy generation declines and pigment cells weaken. Vitamin C, abundant in leafy greens, plays a dual role. It enhances iron absorption and acts as a powerful antioxidant. By improving iron uptake, vitamin C strengthens oxygen delivery. By neutralizing oxidative stress, it reduces cellular wear and tear. This is not superficial beauty advice, this is cellular preservation. Then there are blueberries, small, vibrant, deeply pigmented fruits that contain anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are potent antioxidants that protect tissues from oxidative damage. Oxidative stress is one of the primary drivers of melanocyte aging. As stress accumulates, melanocytes either become dysfunctional or undergo programmed cell death. Blueberries help counterbalance that stress load. They also support collagen formation. Collagen is the structural protein that maintains the integrity of skin and connective tissue surrounding the follicle. Stronger follicular support creates a more stable environment for pigment-producing cells to function effectively. When you combine black sesame seeds, dark leafy greens, and blueberries, you are not applying color to the surface of your hair. You are addressing the internal conditions that influence pigment longevity. You are supplying copper for enzyme activation, iron for oxygenation, folate for DNA repair, vitamin C for antioxidant defense, and polyphenols for cellular protection. Gray hair reflects cumulative biological shifts, and biology responds to consistent nourishment at the level where pigment is born. Now let's move deeper into the biology, because pigment loss is rarely just about one missing nutrient. It is often the result of chronic, low-grade inflammation, quietly disrupting the environment around the hair follicle. Inflammation is not always dramatic or visible. It can simmer beneath the surface for years, triggered by poor diet, stress, metabolic imbalance, or environmental exposure. When inflammation persists, it increases oxidative stress, impairs circulation, and weakens the delicate pigment-producing machinery inside the follicle. If you want to preserve natural hair color, you must calm inflammation at its root. This is where fatty fish such as salmon and sardines become powerful allies. These fish are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, which are biologically active fats known for their anti-inflammatory properties. Omega-3s help regulate inflammatory signaling pathways in the body. They reduce the production of pro-inflammatory molecules that can damage cells over time. When inflammation decreases, blood vessels function more efficiently. Improved blood flow means more oxygen and nutrients are delivered to the hair follicle. Melanocytes, like all active cells, depend on a steady supply of nutrients and oxygen to maintain melanin production. When circulation is optimized, the follicle environment becomes more supportive and less hostile. Omega-3 fatty acids also strengthen cell membranes. Every melanocyte is surrounded by a membrane that controls what enters and exits the cell. A flexible, resilient membrane supports better nutrient exchange and protects against oxidative injury. When membranes are fragile due to poor dietary fat intake, cells become more vulnerable to stress. By incorporating fatty fish regularly, you are reinforcing the structural integrity of pigment cells at a microscopic level. Next, consider walnuts. Walnuts are unique among plant foods because they provide alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3, along with copper and biotin. Copper, as mentioned earlier, is essential for the enzyme tyrosinase, which catalyzes a critical step in melanin synthesis. Without sufficient copper, melanin production becomes inefficient. Even mild deficiencies can subtly influence pigment over time. Walnuts offer a natural source of this trace mineral in a form that can be incorporated easily into daily meals. Biotin, another nutrient found in walnuts, supports keratin infrastructure. Keratin is the structural protein that forms the hair shaft. While keratin itself does not create pigment, a healthy keratin framework provides stability for the pigment embedded within each strand. Weak, brittle hair may lose vibrancy and reflect light differently, making graying appear more pronounced. Supporting keratin production contributes to the overall strength and appearance of naturally pigmented hair. Then there are eggs, one of the most complete nutritional packages available. Eggs provide high-quality protein containing all essential amino acids. Hair follicles require amino acids to build keratin and maintain rapid cell turnover. Eggs are also a rich source of vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 deficiency has been associated with premature graying in some individuals. This vitamin plays a central role in red blood cell formation and DNA synthesis. Red blood cells transport oxygen throughout the body, including to the scalp and follicles. If oxygen delivery is compromised due to low B12 levels, highly active cells like melanocytes may struggle to sustain pigment production. B12 also supports neurological function and energy metabolism. When cellular energy pathways are efficient, rapidly dividing follicle cells can maintain their rhythm of renewal. If energy production falters, cellular stress increases. Chronic stress at the cellular level accelerates aging processes, including pigment decline. Fatty fish reduce inflammatory signaling and enhance circulation. Walnuts provide copper and structural support. Eggs deliver B12 and complete protein for renewal. These foods do not artificially stain hair strands. They influence the biological terrain beneath the scalp, shaping the internal environment in which melanocytes either thrive or deteriorate. Pigment is not painted onto hair. It is manufactured within a living, dynamic system that responds continuously to the quality of nutrients it receives. Now we confront a deeper layer of the story, because gray hair is not driven by nutrition alone. It is influenced by stress, both emotional stress and oxidative stress, two forces that converge at the level of stem cells. Inside every hair follicle lives a reservoir of melanocyte stem cells. These stem cells are responsible for replenishing the pigment-producing melanocytes throughout your life. When functioning properly, they migrate, mature, and restore pigment with each new hair growth cycle. But when these stem cells become depleted or damaged, the follicle loses its ability to regenerate color. Intense or chronic stress can accelerate this depletion. When the body perceives stress, it releases stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones prepare you for survival, redirecting energy toward immediate needs. Over time, repeated stress signaling increases oxidative damage and inflammatory activity. Research suggests that excessive stress can disrupt the niche environment where melanocyte stem cells reside. When that environment becomes unstable, stem cells may prematurely activate, migrate incorrectly, or fail to self-renew. Once depleted, they are difficult to restore. Oxidative stress compounds this process. Every day, your cells produce energy inside structures called mitochondria. Energy production naturally generates reactive oxygen species as byproducts. In small amounts, these molecules are manageable. In excess, they damage proteins, lipids, and DNA. Melanocytes are particularly sensitive because melanin production itself generates oxidative byproducts. That means pigment-producing cells already operate in a high oxidation environment. Without sufficient antioxidant defenses, they accumulate damage faster than many other cell types. This is why antioxidant-rich foods are not optional, they are protective. Blueberries, with their anthocyanins, help neutralize reactive oxygen species before they harm delicate cellular structures. Dark leafy greens supply vitamin C, beta-carotene, and polyphenols that reinforce antioxidant networks. Black sesame seeds contribute lignans that support detoxification pathways. These compounds do not simply float through the bloodstream, they integrate into cellular defense systems, enhancing your body's ability to manage oxidative load. But protection is not just about adding antioxidants. It is also about reducing the sources of stress. Poor sleep increases cortisol, excess sugar intake spikes insulin and promotes inflammation. Sedentary behavior reduces circulation to peripheral tissues, including the scalp. When circulation declines, fewer nutrients reach the follicle. When nutrient delivery slows, pigment production weakens. Hair follicles are among the most metabolically active mini-organs in the body. They demand consistent oxygen and micronutrient supply. Compromise that supply, and their performance declines. Consistency becomes the defining factor. One antioxidant-rich meal cannot reverse years of accumulated oxidative damage. One restful night cannot undo chronic stress patterns. Stem cell environments respond to long-term signals. Every balanced meal, every anti-inflammatory choice, every moment of restorative sleep sends a message of safety and stability to your biology. When the body senses stability, it invests in maintenance and renewal. When it senses chaos, it shifts into conservation mode. Hair color reflects this internal allocation of resources. If the body prioritizes survival over maintenance, pigment becomes secondary. Melanin production requires energy, minerals, and enzymatic precision. In a stressed system, those resources are redirected. Over time, the visible result appears as fading color. Understanding this shifts the narrative. Gray hair is not simply a cosmetic inconvenience. It is a marker of cellular resilience, stem cell health, oxidative balance, and systemic stress load. When you support antioxidant defenses, optimize circulation, regulate inflammation, and protect stem cell niches, you influence the internal terrain that determines whether pigment persists or declines. Every biological system involved in hair coloration responds to repeated patterns of nourishment, rest, and metabolic stability. Gray hair becomes less about inevitability and more about how well the cellular ecosystem is defended against cumulative stress. Now imagine shifting your mindset completely. Instead of fighting gray hair from the outside with chemical dyes, temporary pigments, and surface solutions, you begin strengthening the internal biology that determines whether pigment survives in the first place. Because hair color is not applied, it is manufactured. It is the result of millions of microscopic reactions occurring inside living follicles beneath your scalp. When those reactions are supported, pigment can persist longer. When they are neglected, fading accelerates. Think about what happens each time you eat. Food is not just fuel, it is information. Nutrients act as biochemical signals that switch pathways on or off. Copper activates enzymes like tyrosinase that drive melanin production. Iron ensures oxygen reaches the follicle so energy production remains strong. Vitamin B12 supports DNA synthesis in rapidly dividing follicle cells. Omega-3 fatty acids calm inflammatory pathways that would otherwise damage pigment-producing cells. Antioxidants neutralize reactive oxygen species before they corrode cellular machinery. Every nutrient participates in a coordinated network that determines whether melanocytes function efficiently or decline prematurely. When you consistently consume black sesame seeds, you are supplying trace minerals that feed the pigment enzyme system. When you eat dark leafy greens, you reinforce oxygen delivery and DNA repair mechanisms. When blueberries enter your diet, you expand your antioxidant capacity, buffering oxidative stress that accumulates naturally with age. When fatty fish become a regular part of your meals, you lower systemic inflammation and strengthen cellular membranes. When walnuts provide copper and plant-based omega-3s, you add structural and enzymatic support. When eggs deliver complete protein and B12, you sustain the rapid turnover required for healthy follicle regeneration. This is cumulative biology. No single meal reverses graying. No isolated nutrient acts alone. The power lies in repetition. Each day, you either strengthen melanocyte resilience or allow oxidative and inflammatory stress to gain ground. Cells respond to patterns, not impulses. A nutrient-dense pattern builds internal stability. Stability protects stem cells. Protected stem cells replenish melanocytes. Functional melanocytes sustain pigment. Circulation also plays a decisive role. The scalp is not separate from the rest of the body. It depends on healthy blood vessels to deliver oxygen and nutrients. Diets high in processed sugars and unhealthy fats impair vascular function over time. Reduced vascular flexibility means diminished blood flow to peripheral tissues. Hair follicles, being peripheral structures, feel this reduction quickly. When blood flow is optimized through anti-inflammatory nutrition and healthy fats, nutrient delivery improves. Improved delivery sustains metabolic activity within the follicle. Energy production inside each cell must also remain efficient. Melanin synthesis requires ATP, the energy currency of the cell. Mitochondria generate ATP, but they are vulnerable to oxidative damage. Antioxidant-rich foods help shield mitochondria from dysfunction. When mitochondrial efficiency declines, pigment production becomes energetically costly. Over time, the body conserves energy by reducing non-essential processes, and pigmentation can be one of them. This perspective reframes gray hair entirely. It is not merely a sign of time passing. It is a visible indicator of how well cellular systems are protected against stress, inflammation, nutrient depletion, and vascular decline. You cannot stop chronological aging, but you can influence biological aging. Biological aging responds to inputs: nutrition, sleep, stress management, movement, and micronutrient sufficiency. Choosing whole, nutrient-dense foods daily is not about chasing youth or denying maturity. It is about supporting the intricate cellular orchestra that determines how your body expresses itself outwardly. The most powerful natural dye is not something brushed onto strands. It is the continuous internal nourishment that sustains melanocyte vitality, preserves stem cell function, optimizes circulation, and protects cellular energy systems through deliberate, repeated nutritional signals.